Hey guys, welcome to a very special edition of Behind the Pine podcast. I'm Chris Demo, doing a little makeshift studio digital interview here with my new friend David Gunning. David, how you doing today?
Hey Chris, I'm doing well. It's a nice sunny day down here in Sarasota, Florida. I appreciate you having me on.
No, thanks for being here. I wish I could say the same about the weather in Rochester, but we know that's never the case. So this time of year especially. So cool thing is David actually reached out to me. He found the podcast. We've been talking a little bit. We've gotten to know each other here. And David has, quite a interesting, diverse background between bartending, acting, and everything in between. And of course, a lot of people will tell you that, you bartend long enough, you end up in real estate. And David and I, of course, are both in real estate in other parts of our life. So it's definitely full circle. So David actually has a new series of books out. And when he talked to me about this, it was the coolest thing. It is the Bartender's Guide to Douchebag Customers. He actually sent me a couple copies, much appreciated. And as I kind of read through these volumes that he sent me, it's been hysterical that it is literally like the book version of what we talk about on Behind the Pine. And I was like, all right, this is legit. This is exactly in line. And I think there's definitely some conversations to be had. So, David, thanks for joining us. Go ahead, introduce yourself, tell everyone a little bit about you and, your life at bartending, acting, and how those two things kind of correlated. And on top of that, kind of what motivated you to get these books out there.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. So I guess I could kind of start from the beginning of my whole bartending journey, so to say. It really began in the dish pit at a local pub that was maybe a couple blocks away from my grandparents' house back in the suburbs of Philadelphia. I was just trying to make some extra scratch, to make some cash, just to do little things, maybe go to the movie theaters, go out with my buddies and just have some kind of cash to spend. What happened there was, I went from dishwasher and then it was like this quick progression. At I was 15. So, I was washing dishes and then they said, "Hey, do you want to bust some tables?" I said, "Yeah, sure." Well, then I remember, I'm bussing tables and I'm walking around, and one of the bartenders, he yells at me. He goes, "Hey, I need a keg tap downstairs." And I looked at him. I said, "I don't know how to tap a keg." It's like no idea what you're talking about. It was like, I'm 15, which I guess is like the expected age to be tapping kegs in my neighborhood. The neighborhood I grew up in was called Havertown, which is also known as the 33rd County. So every corner when I was growing up had an Irish pub basically on every single corner due to the thick Irish American, population, the volume of Irish Americans. So either way, he looked at me, he kind of scoffed at me, and he was like, "Go downstairs and tap the keg." I was like, "Okay."
Learn by
That
doing.
yeah. So that was kind of it. I'll actually never forget that moment. Just the bartender's face, just looking at me like, "What are you, an idiot?" Like looking like at a kid. I don't know, I don't even know what grade I was in, um, but yeah, man. I started bar backing. That's when I started to learn kind of all the liquors and the beers and all that. I probably shouldn't have been doing that. I don't, at 15 nowadays.
That'd be a no, but we all back in the day, we all kind of had that intro, younger, feeling like you're the kid in the bar and everything's kind of an adventure. But I
Right.
think, hey,
Yeah. Yeah. So, that led eventually to the natural progression of waiting tables. And then when I turned 21, I finally, I said to myself, I was like, all right, man, like, you see the difference between the serving experience and the bartenders, and you understand that, like, the bartenders are making the dough, and the bartenders they're the rock stars, right? So I was able to finally hop behind the bar. I started bartending in college again, just to make extra money. Um and what happened was, when I was in college, I was working at a nightclub, and then I started my television career. I started booking a couple commercials on TV. I'd hop up to New York City. I'd audition during the week. I would bartend on the weekends, and I would book gigs and then make the cash on the weekends. Eventually, I got hired to do the traffic. I was an on-air traffic reporter for the NBC affiliate in Philadelphia, and so I would do that on the weekends, bartend at nighttime, and then during the week I would drive from Philadelphia to Cape May, and I would work service bar at this place. It's like a hotel bar. It's called Congress Hall. And I remember I was sitting in the back. That service bar was hidden from everything. It was like they didn't want the service bartender to be seen. It's like next to the dish pit. That's where I really learned how to mix because that's all I was doing in the back. And so I guess when you're kind of combining the TV and the bartending thing, I had a funny moment at that place where one of these older servers came up to me. He's probably my age now, but he seemed older at that time when I was
Yeah.
in my early 20s. Comes up to me, he goes, "It is you." And I looked at him like, what? I knew what he was alluding to, but he's like, "I just saw you on TV. What are you doing? Why are you in the back here next to the dish pit making service drinks?" You know what? There's always more money to be made, especially at 21, right? Or 22,
Yeah.
however old I was. So, I kind of just always carried that mantra with me as far as bartending goes, right? I know that's kind of a lot for the intro as far as where I'm coming from, but um, you know, as I progressed in that next year or two, I moved up to New York City. I started bartending at a nightclub in New York City while I was acting. And essentially, for the next 15, 16 years after that, I bartended always while I was auditioning and booking my gigs. So bartending essentially is just, for the actor, especially who I was with my acting career, there was just never like the consistent, hey, you know what? I'm on a show every day.
Mhm.
And that's the case with a lot of actors. They say that every server, every bartender in Los Angeles, is an actor out of work, so to say. But
Yeah.
that's what actors do. They're bartending, they're making their money to pay their rent, to pay for their acting classes, and you're waiting for that next booking, and everybody's praying that they get that big break, so to say, and then they can retire
Right,
from the
right.
bar, and then they hop into their show and they get their series regular role and all of that. So with that being said, yeah, essentially from Philadelphia to New York City, out to Los Angeles, and just different bars, different types of bars, pubs, nightclubs, fine dining, just the I guess the everyday pub. And then finally I had the pleasure of working at a bar that was called Craig's West Hollywood. That was kind of like the neighborhood bar for every celebrity and name you could imagine. And that was my last bartending ride in Los Angeles. I worked there for about the last 6 years that I was in LA and working in Hollywood. But then in 2020, you know, uh, as far as that whole, I guess,
That whole
time,
debacle.
yeah, that whole timeline goes, if that's what you want to call it. Now, I mean, COVID changed a lot for a lot of people, and that's something that happened with myself and my wife, my family. I was fortunate that that Craig's in West Hollywood, we were able to be supported by the regulars and the clientele from that place during COVID. We were still doing deliveries and staying busy and making money, but I just sensed that nothing was going to change. And so unfortunately, that was the moment where I looked around in an empty restaurant with just my coworkers, and I said, you know what, I think it's time to pack it up. So
Mhm.
after that, we made the move to Florida, and my wife, she she's from the area, Sarasota, and I had some family down here too, and I said, okay, let's do it. Let's just pack it up. So we got out, and initially I was like, all right, I can't support a family down here the way that I could in Los Angeles bartending. We hit Florida, and I said to myself, I was like, all right, I don't know that the money is different in different areas of the country, right? Where we're at right now, it's not necessarily going to be the same, same income as it would be, say, in one of the bigger cities like New York or Los Angeles. So I took a sales job for a couple years. Did really, did I did pretty well for myself with that job. I would say that when you combine acting and bartending skills, it's kind of like you're taking all of your improvisational skills and your just your ability to read people and discuss and have no fear as far as a conversation, and then you take the hospitality side as far as bartending goes. You're extra hospitable towards your clients, and you know how to take care of them. That was a good combination for me. However, with that particular job, I wound up parting ways with that company, and then I said to myself, okay, what am I good at? And then in comes real estate.
Yeah,
And
there it
yeah,
is.
yeah, and why? Because again, um, you're working with people, taking care of them, making sure that all of their needs are met, being on top of things. It's like it all connects, right? It's like you taking an order, taking care of the clientele, making their drinks on time, doing it in a orderly fashion. It's all kind of one and the same, right? So I quickly realized that similar to acting with real estate, it's going to be a little spotty while you try to build your book, try to build your business. And so I thought to myself, okay, well, let's put the black on black back on. Let's get some yeah, let's get those insoles into the shoes and let's start pumping out some
Yeah.
drinks. So yeah, I got lucky. I landed at a really good place. It's kind of centralized to the area, and I've met some really amazing people, some great coworkers, and I've really been able to build a nice community while bartending and meeting people to do business with as well for real estate. So, at, at my age, being in my 40s now, I'm now 43. As you know, I'm sure you stand there and your body hurts a little bit, maybe your lower
It
back,
does. Yes, it
maybe your
does.
hips, yeah, maybe your knees. And I was thinking to myself, I'm like, all right, I've been doing this for a long time at this point. How can I pivot? How can I, just benefit financially from all this experience? And so I thought to myself, I've been wanting to write a book for quite some time. Let's write a book. Let's make some, let's make some cash and be creative, because the creative aspect for me, it was kind of lacking since I left Hollywood. So I was like, all right, let's write a book, but how do we do it? S- Um, how are people's attention spans nowadays? They're almost, they don't exist, right? A lot of the
Right.
scroll, scroll, scroll. So I said, all right, let's create a book that's simple. So um, I designed my book basically to be written like a children's book series, easy illustrations, colored pencil style, um, and then let's make it like characters, easy characters. People can look at it, they can have a quick laugh, move on to the next character. So I know I sent you copies of the book, so hopefully you can kind of understand how we hop in and hop out.
No, I mean, you're spot on.
There they
I
are.
love the middle finger. That awesome,
Yeah,
it's so awesome.
I appreciate you taking a gander at them. Um, pretty much the whole idea was uh, to bring some humor, quick humor, make it easy to read, and to be relatable to any bartender who's ever been, you know, uh, behind the pine, so to say.
No, absolutely, and I'm sitting here listening to your story. It's the same thing where I've been doing this since I was a busboy at 14 at my dad's restaurant, and like I was at the server station and be tucked behind the bar, doing all my stuff there. And then I got like just like you did, I got the call up where the bar, and I was always looking at the bar. We were like two different worlds in the same on the same planet. where, I get the call up from my buddy Taylor, who's now my financial advisor, because, people we all do grow up eventually. Slam my bus, we stopped serving, the bus shift is over. And he goes, hop behind the bar and wash glasses. And then breaking that threshold to be behind the bar and just being in a whole different atmosphere. You just remember those moments. Growing, like you said, just naturally going through the ranks. And then to a point now where I've been doing this, my whole life. My family's been in the business since I was 4 years old. And the same things you're talking about. I've been doing this for so long. Everything in life does have a shelf life. And how can I stay connected to the culture, the community, and things I know about, and benefit from it financially, while also not standing on my feet till 2:30 in the morning, with the wife and kids at home, and all those things. So I mean, as far as a one-on-one comparison, I mean, it's funny how it tracks. That was really my whole concept behind this, is because I love the people I work with. There's more in-depth, like, humanity side of the tracks of people in this industry where, probably people say, "Oh, you're the person who serves my drinks," but there's more to it. And my whole idea was to say, "Okay, how do we see where different kinds of places we work, different cities, all those other things, where are they different, and where do they intersect in this, like, Venn diagram of the service industry?" And, the things you're talking about are all things that have already been touched on in the short life of this show. We all are we have a lot of these similar things, whether it's using bartending as extra money, using bartending as a way to network for another job, but it's always something to rely on. How we talk about we're both in real estate now, I think it kind of tracks similarly to I'm bartending to kind of keep gas in the tank kind of thing until I get, my next gig, or my next when I get that big call. And it's the same when you got to keep residual coming in, especially when you got all these bills. And and then it's always something you can go back to. You can move cities, you can, have go through a rough time, and it's I think it's always going to be needed somewhere. And that's the kind of the power of it. And there's people that leave it and decide to come back, like, "Hey, the career thing wasn't for me," or "This wasn't for me," and they come back to it. And I think there's just something about the people that are in this industry that kind of all get that. They've been through somewhat of they've been through their own story that is relatable at so many different points to somebody that's doing it. And, we have teachers that work for us, and they work double time over the school year, and then that is their only job in the summer when they're off. So they got more free time in the summer. So to have that extra income, or it's income you need, and people that do it full time. But the process, the way you kind of get into it, the way you kind of stay with it, and the way it kind of keeps you sucked in for better or worse, is, I think, a really shared story with a lot of people. And I think we've talked about this before too. It's the people that do it for a while, you kind of know they got it when they're in, and the people that aren't cut out for it, they're in and out quick, and you never really see them again. But the skills you hone, the being able to hold a conversation, to network, feel comfortable in any situation, is it really, really, something that I think could be translated to anything else in your life. So it's great to hear that we're kinda tracking the same here, and I've heard this from so many other people. And I think that's why, this is what's gonna kinda connect people. And I also wanted the people that are more just patrons of bars and all those other things, that they kinda see there's more behind the person that just opens your beer. You know what I mean? There's a lot of reasons why people do it. There's a rise these are reasons why people love it, but it's really cool. And I think that's gonna be something shared across all these things. And this book, I mean, like how you said, the people that are relatable, all those other things, and the things that service in it, like, this is exactly. I don't think there's one person I've ever worked with that I could give this to, and they wouldn't know exactly who you're talking about without getting through the first picture, the first line of each page. And it's so funny that these things track so well. This is kinda like, when you're in the industry, this is the inside stuff. Like, "Yep, we know who that person is. We know who that person is." And I think you're working on your 3rd volume right now?
Yeah, so I finished the first draft of all the characters. I have all the illustrations done. So now I just have to, fine comb through all the text for each character. I think that, really my goal was that anyone who has a relative or I mean, everybody has a relative or a friend that has bartended before, right? And my idea basically was like, hey, this is a great stocking stuffer, or like just one of
Yeah.
those good gag gifts that can chill on your coffee table or wherever, right? Like, and it's good for any age bartender. I feel like, because if you're on the younger end of the spectrum, you go out. I'm sure you've been there, in your early 20s, and everybody's done their shifts. Everybody wants to go out for a drink and still hang out, and you take it into the late night of the hours, and then somebody picks up the book and they're like, "Oh, hey, man, what is this? This is hilarious! Like what? Like
Yeah, right.
what's with the old hag here? With the old bar wench, giving everybody the middle finger. Like I want to do that." And you just trade off each character and story. And what I did in order to um, relate these books, I created little Easter eggs, so to say. So, the pen name is a little larger on this one, right? Veinte por ciento. For anybody who works in the service industry, veinte por ciento is just 20%, right? In Spanish. So, 20% is what I feel like most people in the industry would consider to be the what should be the standard tip amount of any check.
It's a number we live by.
Yeah, yeah. It's like you buy a drink for someone, hopefully, yeah, they toss you a 20. I also created 20 characters per book, and then I sell it for $20. So it's the rule of 20 essentially throughout the entire book. That was the whole point of creating the pen name as that, and just kind of tying everything in. Anybody who's purchasing the books can kind of pick up on that and be like, oh, all right, cool. It's even more. There's even more tie-in than just what's going on with the characters. So it's something I obviously want to continue. I think that it's something that, like you said, not only shareable with fellow bartenders, but maybe you're one of these douchebags when you
Yep.
hang out at the bar and you don't even know it yet. But then
Yeah,
you pick up this book, and maybe as a bar goer, you're like, oh man,
that's me.
I do that.
I tell people that all the time because, like, so I'll have the show playing on the TVs at Magpie where I work, and the biggest question I get from customers is, "Do you talk about us on there?" I go, "Probably." I mean, I don't name you my name, but I go, "It's also, it's a customer etiquette guide to be like, fuck, don't be that guy, and if you're that guy, just know that." Another thing is we notice. We have to put on the smile sometimes, and, we gotta understand that we have to have the service industry, to a certain extent, the service industry service with a smile, so to say, and do our job to try to make the most amount of money as possible. But at the end of the day, we pay attention to what's going on. We have our preferences for who we want to deal with. And there's people that walk in the bar you see all the time, and you're like, fuck this fucking guy. Like I don't want to. And then you got to turn around and say, hey, how are you, man? And just try to rustle as many dollars out of them as possible while not trying to. That's when you got to take a break in the kitchen for a minute, just take a breather before you deal with those people again.
Absolutely, man. It's like that. It's almost like you haven't earned your final stripe until you have to run into the cooler or the walk-in and just scream a little bit because you're just ready
Yeah.
to lose your mind, right?
At one of
It's
at
like,
one of our bars, we have a good friend and an employee. I'm not gonna name her by name. I'm sure she'll hear this, but she's a habitual crier for no reason. She's like on our walk-in cooler. It says her names, and then it's her crying closet. So it's just set aside for her, and
that's
we love
great.
her. But it's a running joke with us, and in our group chats and stuff. If she says something, I was like, oh come on, don't cry about it. So
Yeah,
um, it's a lot to deal with people, and we'd say you gotta check stuff at the door, service with a smile, and we all are about, like how you touched on, we're about serving and hosting, and being there to provide an experience for people, which translates to other aspects of your life. And we always talk about how we think it, it's it's a great life skill that everybody should have to at least go through a little bit of a time and a little bit of a stint in this industry, because you can learn a lot about people, you can learn a lot about yourself, you can learn about a lot of things of human interaction, reading people, like you said, and those skills don't just go away as soon as you step out from behind the bar. Those are applicable in other aspects of your life, and even parenting. Sometimes I'm like, all right, I can't be impatient with my kids like I'm impatient with some drunk asshole sometimes. But I tell people all the time that you get to an age where the customers and your kids start kind of reminding you of each other. And that's when it's like, okay, I should probably start a podcast and stop being back here. We like I've said that we've talked about how this industry and the skills you hone doing it translate to other things, or it is a side hustle or a primary income until careers take off. And I think that's, like we said, it's applicable across the board. But you having an acting career, did you find this? That's really unique. So, I mean, to me, anyways, coming from Rochester, New York. I mean, I'm sure in LA, it's or New York, that's all over the place. But did you also find that, like, I've rent real estate clients at the bar, I've done all those things. Does that really translate the same way in acting? You're like, "Listen," like you said, that place, was it Craig's, I think it was? Is that the same thing? Is it good to be just in the mix with those people, and does that benefit you a ton?
Yeah, it definitely did. Right. So at a place like that, I worked at a couple different places
Mhm,
in Hollywood. Uh, the one place that I got to for my first, it's basically like two main gigs, right? So there was this one place called 11. I was right in the middle of Boys Town, West Hollywood. I met so many great people there. Just the people that we could run into. That's really where I started my voice career. I had one studio head, and then also arguably one of the top agents in voiceover come into that bar. And we were just chatting, and they said, "Hey, you got an interesting voice. You're pretty young." I think I was probably, I don't know, 23, 24 at that point. They said, "Have you ever gotten into voiceover?" I said, "Well, I was a broadcaster at one point. It was a short period, but as far as like professional voiceover for commercials and television and film and all that, it's like no, no." I said, "Well, all right, hey, why don't you come in and read for us, right?" So before you know it, I went in. Next thing you know, I have an agent. It wasn't that specific agent, but I wound
mhm.
up at a different agency called William Morris Agency, which is now, I believe, William Morris Endeavor. But either way, that was just a massive agency and a big opportunity to be with them. After a couple years with them, I hopped around and I wound up with a different agency called Vox, and they were great as well. But really, what happened was it's little things like that would kind of kickstart where you need to go because everybody's in the industry. They're all there, and you're interacting with people.
Mhm.
And look, every bartender has a different personality. Myself, I just like to be myself. So I just run into people and go, "Hey, are you in the game?" "Yeah." "All right, cool, cool. Let's chat." Right. I'd always run into producers, directors, etc. And my second stop at Craig's, for the second half, I want to say in LA. Yeah, certainly. I mean, I a couple of my last gigs were just from regulars that got to know me, and maybe something popped up and they're like, "Hey David, send me over your demo." And then next thing you know, I'm getting a call and I'm in the studio, or I'm flying out to do a gig. So it definitely was hand in hand. I'm also finding that it's kind of the same as real estate, right? Like we run into people, and the question obviously always is, "Oh, so what do you really do?" Right?
Yeah,
So,
right. What's your real job?
yeah, what's your real job? Well, this must be fake
While
monopoly
you're at
money.
your job, like, I walk into my accountant's office, like, "I know you do this 5 days a week, but what's your real job?"
Right, right. So, yeah, it's like, oh, and it's usually an organic thing, like, I don't really talk about real estate until maybe somebody brings it up. Where, they ask that question. It's like, "Hey, what do you do anything during the day?" "Yeah, sure. Yeah, I sell real estate." And then, "Oh, well, and then that
Yeah.
just rolls into, there's sometimes I've actually called the bar my office.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
okay, yeah. I mean, you meet good people, and then they come back, and then they want to chat about their real estate situation and what they're looking to do. If they're in the market, and it's easy. They can come in, they can have a drink, we can sit there and chat. I think it's way better than going into some office where everybody's real formal, and I
It
want
feels
to.
more like a sales pitch that way, and I think that's really important what you're touching on is, like, not bringing stuff up and having customers pull stuff out of you instead of being behind the bar like, "Hey, I'm just here to grab leads. Like, I'm here to serve you drinks. I didn't bring up anything else, and if you get something out of me," and that's, like you said, that organic development of those things is huge, and that's also, I think, that's a weird, like, it's like a weird dynamic where people, look at bars, it's just, oh, that's just a bunch of people getting drunk or doing this. And it's really not. I think there's a little bit more trust built into it because you're just at a bar hanging out and it's not in an office. Like I'd rather, I think I could pick up a better client sometimes at a bar than email blasting somebody or cold calling somebody that you could be one in a million where they get to know you on a personal level for a couple minutes, then they can kinda understand where you're coming from a professional standpoint if you guys were to develop another relationship, and that's, I think, huge is they're like, "Oh, this guy just wasn't some guy knocking on my door trying to generate business and revenue, we were just hanging out at the bar and he was working." And I think that's an underrated part of the industry completely.
Absolutely, man. And I would say, obviously, it's a line that um, I feel like I stole from John Wick, but it's probably a line that's been around for ages, which is, how you do one thing is how you do everything, right?
Yeah,
And so when you have someone at the bar and you take care of them with, the white glove service, and they feel good and they feel like gold when you're done with them, I think it's fairly easy to assume that, hey, if this guy was representing me in real estate, or if I was working with him in any other capacity, this is how this person operates,
right,
right? And
right.
so if you operate like a professional, you take good care of people, you make them feel good, and you make them want to come back over and over to just spend time with you. That's also the same feeling that someone should have when they're doing business with you as well. So, I think it definitely translates, like like
No,
like
for
you were
sure.
saying.
And that's why as I've gotten older, I'm like, okay, listen, you feel like you've been bartending a long time and you're like, am I getting too old for this? But regardless, I mean, the fact is you are doing it. You take pride in it. You're representing yourself in the bar at all times. And, you want people to come into the bar and be happy to see you there, like just the same way I was talking about how you got those customers you don't like. And you're like, this fucking guy, you don't want a customer walking in the bar and be like, this fucking bartender, like, if my
Right.
friends wanted to come here on his shift or her shift, you don't wanna be
Uh-huh.
that bartender any more than you wanna be that customer,
Right.
and, the kill 'em with kindness thing and always be professional, always be courteous, always want to deliver prompt professional service, even if, you know it's just kinda it might not have the financial returns, but keeping yourself on those standards, like you said, I think shows through to people, and it's just a better way, I think, to live your life, like, it will translate to everything else. So that's really interesting. Do you have any, like, I know you've been Philly, New York, LA, Florida, all these different places and all these different cities. Do you tend to have a preference for what you like, or has it kind of been progressed with where you are in your life? The higher end cocktails, the nightclubs, the more scotch and bourbon crowd, the dive bars, the Irish pubs. Is there any preference to, because I like people we have that work with me and work for my family. I tell them all the time, like, some people work at restaurants, and then we kind of like the bar I work at is kind of like our neighborhood Cheers. So it's like the I think sometimes it's probably they've mentioned that it's great to kind of say, well, sometimes I'm more in the mood for this, and this is a nice change of pace. I've always only worked at one place, so do you have a preference or?
Yeah, so I would say I just always prefer to be at a place where I can have a great connection with the clientele. So what I mean by that is I like to be in an environment where I'm allowed to completely be myself, and have the freedom to um, spend that extra time with my customers and my clientele.
Mhm.
Whereas, so it's not like an uppity, straight backed corporate, situation where, you have to be on the straight and narrow and follow every rule. Because then I feel like maybe when you have the liberty to just be yourself, I think that's when the customer gets the best service because you can just take care of them in your own way, right? And that to me is what's really important. The place I'm at right now on the weekends, my favorite time is literally from when I get there, which could be, late afternoon to the evening, up until say, club hours, which is
Right.
when, the DJ comes on. I love both aspects because, you know, once DJ goes on, old man here, I stick my earplugs in
Yeah.
and I'm just head down, right? What do you need? What do you need? But my favorite part is that time where it's very one on one, or one on two. It's myself and the customer, and we're interacting and we're getting to know each other, and we're having fun, and there's that rapport. So really, whether it's a dive bar, a fancy place, um, I think the bar can change, but uh, if my personality can stay the same and I can just be who I want to be, so that's my kind of place.
No, that's really true.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's what I would prefer.
No, and I just was having this conversation actually this morning with my brother-in-law. I'm like, and I've had this discussion before on the show, like where I work, it's, we get the happy hour kind of crowd, people that are there we have other restaurants and bars around us. So people that are there for pre-dinner drinks, if they're waiting for their reservation with like the text service, or they're coming for a drink right after dinner before they, a little nightcap before they go home. But that's those times where I'm actually a bartender and I'm not a drink slinger. And it's, you get to talk to people, and it's I was telling him, I go, there's those things that you can't really teach or understand unless you do it, where there's timing and everything, and how you engage people and how you take their money and how you take their receipts and their slips, and you get that chance where how you get to they actually get to watch you make their drinks, and they're engaged with what you're doing, and you're engaged with them, getting to know them, talking to them about personal stuff, professional stuff, whatever it might be. And then it turns into that's my favorite part, but, then at the end, it's financially more rewarding to have to just mix and throw drinks at people as fast as you can for the last 2, 3 hours of the night, and that's it's I do, I do understand exactly what you're talking about, and I actually speaking about my brother-in-law, I did promise him eventually I would ask him, he's been listening to the show, he goes, "The one thing I'm always curious, can you ask people what is their least favorite drink to make?" So, I'm gonna go right out of the gate here with him and ask you, do you have a drink that you absolutely hate making?
You know, not that it's difficult to make, but it is the principle, right? And I think that it's kind of like the root of all evil drinks that started it all. It's the mojito.
Ah, the mojito. Yeah, we don't even have mint leaves. We don't even gonna get there. The mojito with
Yeah,
the mint and the sugar and,
right.
it's putting a
So,
plant in your drink.
yeah, I mean, here's the thing. I feel like out of all the drinks, out of all the cocktails I've made over the years that involve muddling and all that, I feel like the mojito, as far as I can remember, I feel like that drink was the catalyst towards all these other craft cocktails with fruits and veggies and everything possible, right? It was like,
Garnishes and using the flame and all this other shit that's come along.
yeah, I feel like it was ground zero, right? So, I mean, literally, to make one,
Oh, no, right. It's no, you get the bartending PTSD as much as you get the actual drinking PTSD. That's It's almost like sports where it's like, well, that's not against the rules, but it's known that you just don't do that. Like, it's not in the rule book, but it's kinda not accepted. It's, it's yeah, and the people that order shit like that, like, the experience as they're being their bartender goes exactly how you fucking thought it was going to. You're just like, "Yeah, yeah, your drink does tell you a lot about you." So it's no different than, any other telltale marks, and I know in your books you do bring up, like, the characteristics of these people, and it's like you read through it, you're like, "Fucking yes, I know exactly what you're talking about." I'm gonna have to tell my yeah, I know, I've seen this douchebag, different face and a different shirt, but you've definitely been here before, so that's so awesome. So, David, well, I mean, we're going to be wrapping it up here, and I just can't thank you enough for telling your story. Everything that's led you from this industry to acting to what you're doing now down in Florida, and which has eventually now led you to writing these books. And it's been really, I think, validating for me personally to say, okay, this guy has kind of got the same idea. As far as it is like the book and the movie kind of thing. It's literally it's a story that I think is that, I obviously we both think is worth telling and worth talking about, and I think that, you know, um, I think people are really gonna resonate with a lot of this stuff. I mean, I could tell you reading through it, I know it's like you have these images and these descriptions, but you also have your own image of that person in your head, and it really is a shared universal experience for people that are actually behind the pine in the weeds and making it happen no matter what city, state, country. I think it does translate. So again, I do want to tell everybody, please look up the bartender's guide to douchebag customers. You will not be disappointed. We are going to be actually using these up in our upcoming episodes. We're going to be discussing these customers, who they are, and then again, if like we did talk about customers, don't be any of these people. David, anything else you want to add before we sign off here? Yeah. No, absolutely, man. There's gonna be no shortage of either of those things, and we appreciate you. I'm looking forward for the next volume to come out, and we will be talking about you. If you guys are ever down in the Sarasota, Florida area, please make sure you search out David and order his finest mojito the second you walk in the bar. Dave, thanks so much. I appreciate the time, and everyone, thank you for tuning in on this very special edition of Behind the Pipe podcast. We will see you guys all soon. Cheers.